Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to tentatively talk about the fun and games at the Brexit border as the news of well-meaning but largely clueless people who keep trying to deliver supplies to countries surrounding Ukraine, in particular Poland, to help refugees fleeing the war. Put simply, the process is coming as something of a shock for these charitable people, but the government may be trying to play more divisive politics to avoid taking responsibility for what is entirely their mess. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, as a result of the Tories' hard Brexit, we left the customs union single market at the start of last year, in direct contradiction to the promises of everyone involved in the 2016 referendum. But never mind that now. The point is that because we refuse to align our standards with the EU, we have to have a standards border between our territories. This is so that each side can control what goods are imported and avoid unlawful goods entering their market. Obviously, the EU have the higher standards, applied this border immediately at the start of last year. The UK government don't care about any standards, as may be demonstrated by our cabinet ministers. And so we still haven't rolled out our standards border to this day. But also leaving the customs union meant that customs controls had to be applied when goods passed from one territory to the other, largely for revenue collection, also for safety and other things. These were also immediately applied by the EU at the start of last year, but the UK only just started applying those at the start of 2022. Even then, we are adopting a light touch approach. Like if you read the government website, it says that full customs controls are in place. Certainly the procedures are there. However, in reality, from a practical point of view, we can't actually manage genuine full customs controls. So physical checks are only really being applied if it will not significantly slow down traffic. Now, given that physical checks absolutely significantly slow down traffic, HMRC have formally adopted a policy of traffic flow over revenue. They've even said so in Parliament, it's all on record. In other words, you need your paperwork to get through, you've still got to do all that, but the chances of anyone actually checking what's in the box is fairly low. In other words, naughty people, we sometimes call them smugglers, can make false declarations, and there's a much better chance than should ordinarily be the case that nobody will find them out because no one will check. This will be costing us quite a bit in taxes, so deprives us of vital public service spending. So that's the reality of what's happening at our Brexit trade borders. Doesn't include with Ireland, it's a completely different ballgame. But the bulk of our trade is between Kent and France anyway. So now imagine that a local community, feeling rather more sympathy for those in Ukraine blighted by a senseless war than our government is, they club together to buy some essential supplies for refugees passing into neighbouring countries, whether Poland, Moldova, Romania, whatever. You know, a couple of years ago, you'd load up the van, be on your way. Certainly if going to, say, Poland, which many of them are, you'd be fine because they're in the EU, off you toddle to hand over the supplies to the authorities at the border dealing with refugees. Now it's a different matter. We are a third country and full standards and customs controls apply. We didn't negotiate any exceptions for humanitarian aid in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. There's no provision for it at all. So that van load of, I don't know, sleeping bags, nappies, blankets, clothing, whatever, is subject to controls. Oh my God, if you've got food, God help you, because then the process is much worse. Don't do that. You need to register with government systems to get codes to be able to get through Dover, onto the ferry and so on. And at the start of this crisis, I said that anyone trying to send goods like this was going to be in for a rude awakening. Donate money to the charities dealing with it directly. I would still say that. Trade experts are saying that. The government is even saying that. And the government and the media have really not been informing people of the realities of Brexit, because otherwise people would demand that we do something to reverse it. So not only was there always going to be significant delays for people trying to get these supplies to countries around Ukraine, but this sort of charitable work was bound to involve some people trying to drive there who had no idea what the systems are now. Poor sods, kind charitable sods, will have had the shock of their life when they tried to get anywhere near the border. And sure enough, some days ago, there was this opening line in Kent Online. Frustrated charity bosses say post-Brexit customs red tape at Dover has held up the transportation of aid shipments to Ukraine. No, they don't bother to say EU red tape. It's Brexit red tape. This media outlet is in Kent, a heavily Tory constituency whose MPs pushed Brexit very hard. The county voted for Brexit with 59% voting to clog up their roads and being the largest dump for human excrement in the Western world. But this news organisation obviously doesn't care about pandering to the sensitivities of the locals. You done goofed, they seem to be saying. Deal with it. So it was reporting vans being stuck for days because of the paperwork issues. Those paperwork issues mostly being that they didn't have the paperwork because, like far too many people, they thought that nothing would really change with Brexit. That was ultimately the problem right from the start. People thought, wow, what's really going to change if we're honest? I'm sure there'll be a few technical things that people have to worry about. It's not going to affect me, is it? They thought that any problems with Brexit that Brexit would cause would be for some bugger else. Now, before I talk about the latest stunt the government have just pulled, I'll add this in. Brexit cost us our freedom. It wasn't a process of sticking two fingers up at the French or whomever the xenophobes had imaginary beefs with on the continent. It involved removing freedoms for us. When Priti Patel boasted that she'd stopped freedom of movement, that was for us. For us, not for anyone else. Note how we are hardly applying any Brexit border controls on imports from the EU. That's because we can't afford to. We need the trade too much. Also notice how the EU are applying full controls. That's because they care much less about strangling trade with the UK. They don't want to, it's not in their interest to, but it's better than knackering their single market. In other words, we need them a lot more than they need us. Bloody stupid that we voted to go from a position of massive power in the EU to that of a medium-sized island off the northern coast of Europe. We've literally gone back to Tudor days of influence in Europe now, only at least Tudor time saw us going forwards. Now we're going backwards. But anyway, this news is a bit of a threat to Brexit. It shows people that leaving the EU had rather more consequences than the government would like us to see. So the government announced an easement on export procedures. Now, I was pointed to this by a guy on Twitter that I've referenced many times and you should absolutely follow if you want to be kept up to date with Brexit trade issues. The government said that they were applying a temporary customs easement. So that sounds good. The problem is that the government can ease the export requirements for goods leaving Britain. What confused me as I was saying, well, hang on, this is leaving. So the British government can't remove anything that just allows them to sail on and into France. They can't do anything about import controls as it enters France. So isn't this going to it's not going to suddenly let the vans pass through. It can't do that. It's got nothing to do with us, that. We can allow things to be waved through coming into the country. We're not going out of it. We can't just pretend Brexit never happened. There will still be paperwork required. There will still be delays while it's checked. There will still be things you can't take through at all. Though I have to say, I believe France have actually been fairly accommodating when it comes to some things. We've heard stories about, tight standards controls at various borders with the EU. France have actually not been too bad at all. They've not applied full import controls as strongly as they could have done. But still, they're not going to let us, take the piss completely. And Michael suggested that this is an attempt by the UK government to just shift the blame to the EU. A way of saying, well, we've suspended our export controls in the interest of helping a humanitarian cause. It's only the EU blocking things now. And people who are not thinking carefully about the process will nod along and agree that the EU or the French, whomever you wish to blame, is being overly officious. Don't they know it's just supplies for refugees? No, they don't know. How would they know this? That's the point. A van rocks up to the border and says it's got humanitarian supplies for Ukrainian refugees. They're not going to be sold. They're going to be given charitably. How do the authorities know that that's true without paperwork and checks? It could be loaded up with goods for sale in the EU for all they know. It could be loaded up with goods that do not meet the standards of the single market, though that will be of more risk in the coming years. But the point is, unless you have your paperwork and unless checks take place, the authorities have no idea what your van is doing at the border. Easements, as they are called, are just like music to the ears of smugglers. They're not a pragmatic solution to trade difficulties. Rejoining the single market and customs union would be the pragmatic solution to that. So what will happen? Well, I'm told that the practical process is that these vans will now be able to get onto the ferry without major hassles. That'd be good. Oh, brilliant. The government have removed these restrictions. Onto the ferry we go. Brilliant. Then they'll get to the other end. If they've not got the right paperwork, they will just be turned back. Where's your paperwork? What paperwork? Where's your paperwork for this load? Well, the government said we don't need it. Yeah, our government said something different. So this could actually end up causing more delays. Because if you get sent back, that's not helping you. The government are not helping here if the people involved are those who don't understand the new trading systems. I suppose it might help those who do have their paperwork all in order. But for those who don't, which is what's causing the problem, more delays. It'll actually frustrate them even more. So it could certainly be seen as the government screwing people over just to avoid responsibility for their brainless Brexit. Because this easement doesn't help people who are struggling with the post-Brexit customs issues. But there we are. I might update next week if anything interesting emerges from this. I suppose we have to give it a few days to see what's actually going to happen. But until then, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.